We have two versions of the story, okay? Because my version is extremely like spiritual, what happened next, and I literally get tears in my eyes every single time I remember this. And Mo's version is extremely medical, to the point, and makes a lot of sense. So I guess you could hear both our versions and then decide which one you believe.
Giving birth is one of the most significant events of your life. Sadly, the joy that you should feel can often be replaced with anxiety and helplessness instead. As a labor and delivery nurse, I'm revealing insider information to educate you, reassure you, and decrease your fear. In this podcast, you'll hear empowering birth stories and experts weigh in on a range of topics. Being Jewish also has me exploring Judaism's influence on the reproductive experience. However, I speak to anyone wishing to navigate their journey with more joy and confidence. I'm your host, Chani Fingerer, and you're listening to the Happy Birthway Podcast. The Jewish weekly day of rest, Shabbos, is so precious and sacred. However, many women find it challenging to refrain from applying makeup on this festive day, and some are even hesitant to leave the house. Enter Seventh Day Shine, a revolutionary skincare and makeup line that can be applied on Shabbos while keeping halacha. Their foundation, blush, bronzer, eyeshadow, and eyeliner and lip powders come in a huge array of colors, and their application brushes are so luxurious. My favorite product is Luminosity, an intensely hydrating and refreshingly scented serum that's especially formulated for permissible application on Shabbos. Check out their full line on seventhDayShine.com. That's the number 7 THDAYSHINE.com and enter Birthway10 for 10% off your purchase. Find the link in the episode show notes. It takes time and practice to master the skill of the newborn swaddle. So here's my hack. Go to elliesandco.com. Among their full line of gorgeous, high-quality baby bedding and layette sets, you will find adjustable swaddle blankets that take out all the guesswork. With a pocket for baby's legs and adjustable wings with secure closures, your baby's swaddle will be perfect every time. Go to elliesandco.com. That's ELYSANDCO.com and enter BW10 for 10% off your purchase. Link in the episode show notes. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Birthway Podcast. Today, I am going to be interviewing Shira and Mo Schenberger on their birth experiences of their 3 children. Welcome to the show, Shira and Mo.
Hey, hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know it's super hectic for you having a new baby and everything, and I really can't wait to hear your unique experiences. So how old are your 3 beautiful children?
Why don't you take this one, since I still have mom brain.
Do you remember their birthdays?
Yeah, I have the whole old database backed up, and so we've got our oldest, Rafi, who is 10, who was born in November. Then we have Daniela, who just turned 9 in April, and Ariel Sophia, who is now almost 3.5 months old today.
Who still goes by her first name, her full name, because she's so brand new.
She's so little with a big name. It's a beautiful name, and all of your kids are so beautiful. I really enjoy following your Instagram account and seeing them. So you guys have a few unique experiences that I would love to talk about. First of all, I know that Shira, your husband Mo, is Dr. Mo Schenberger, neonatology fellow, right? Which means that he's almost done his crazy long training to become a neonatologist, which is first going to med school, then becoming a pediatric resident, and then further training as a neonatologist, correct?
In other words, it's kind of like finally. But yes, you say it clearer.
The end is finally starting to be a little visible. How much longer do you have, Mo?
1 more year. This going into my last year now.
Can't pass fast enough,
No.
right, Shira?
No, almost basically mentally checked out to move on already. So it's really just the time constraints right now.
So this is spanning like a 10-year training period, and as you said, your Rafi is 10 years old. So when you had him, your first, then was Mo in medical school already?
It was about the year before. Rafi was 8 months old when I started medical school.
Yeah, so we were in the process of like applying, doing all that fun stuff.
Yeah, at
While
the time
being
when Rafi was
pregnant and
born.
having
Yeah.
him.
So why don't you start from the beginning? Let me hear.
Where do we start from?
Once upon a time.
Exactly. Yeah, the most like intriguing thing when I think back to like these stories is just like the major difference between like our kind of relationship and where we were and like going into the hospital and experiencing the whole thing. On one end of things where Mo was like applying to med school, he was basically pre-med, like hopeful eyes and all that stuff. And then towards the end, like, this last pregnancy delivery, which was a whole other thing, where there was just like a whole different experience, even just simply like where Mo was.
It was like coming full circle.
Yeah, very much so.
Where were you guys living?
We were in Brooklyn. Honestly, the pregnancy was kind of uneventful. Like, I was so young. We had just gotten married. I got pregnant like 3 months in. And so like it was really sudden and new. And I just remember like one day I like realized I was pregnant and I called my mom and I was just like, how? So fast. And she was like, how? Are you really asking me that question?
Let me tell you how things work. Does Mo want to go to medical school? He needs to learn this.
Basically, is basically what she said. But either way, the actual pregnancy was kind of uneventful. Like, I don't even really, I was nauseous, then I wasn't. I had energy. I remember like not.
You were going to work and
Yeah,
everything.
like whatever. That part kind of is like a blur.
Uneventful is good.
Uneventful is great, and time kind of passed. The real fun part of the story begins, I guess, like the month before.
You started to bug out.
Exactly.
You were done with the pregnancy.
Oh my God, I'm so done. I'm sure lots of you guys can relate.
Do you know why the last trimester is so hard?
Why?
Because otherwise no one would want to go into labor.
It's true. Yeah, there's like impending doom. There's the feeling of like, I just want it to be over. That's it. Whether you're so scared or not, you still just want it to be over. But basically what happened to me was looking back, I now can tell you this, was that I had started having like gallstone pain. But I didn't know this because it was my first pregnancy. And, I would go to my mom's house like those last couple of weekends and we would eat the cholent. And after I would be like, wow, like my stomach really hurts. And my mom would be like, yay, contractions. And really, no, it was not contractions. It was gallstones.
Oh,
so no one really knew, and that was kind of brewing for a while.
It's like a mix of heartburn and different types of abdominal pains over the course of months, and then the weeks prior it's getting more intense,
and we were just like none the wiser. We were like, yeah, like this is how it's supposed to go, right? Like it's supposed to hurt, so like this is the deal. And so
yeah, there's such a variety of like aches and pains in pregnancy, like heartburn, like you said.
Yeah. So like I'm sure we looked it up and we were like, oh, is this normal? Is this not? Like, we had our eyes kind of wide open, but still like it came so suddenly and so fast when it hit the fan finally. But basically,
which was a whole experience in itself, of course. I mean, as we're talking, I'm thinking of like, the whole raising the kids and going through med school and residency life and moving back and forth, up and down, all these things is a whole entire story in its own. But these birth stories definitely are as well. They're their own, let alone chapters, they're books. And that one, our first one, was definitely has been the taker, for sure.
So basically, the night before my due date, it was a Motzei Shabbos, a Saturday night, and I was like, I'm done. I am done, like all the real dones. And I had read, if you eat a pineapple, things will help and move and just go. And so that is what I decided to do. The thing is that I didn't know that I was having gallstone pain, which was probably like the silliest thing I could have done, because what happened was I ended up going to full-blown gallstone attack.
I mean, it's not your fault, so it wasn't silly. It just was the most inconvenient thing you could have done.
Oh, it's never her fault.
It basically, in other words. So that night I like woke up, like I was feeling sick from, I don't know, for a couple of hours. And then I finally woke up just like vomiting like nonstop, and really having some intense pain. And I like turned to Mo. It must have been, I don't know, like 1, 2. That's when these things
And that was like
suddenly
almost midnight or even
like
after.
plateau.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening.
Right. I
It's
mean,
the
it was-
due date. Here we
Yeah.
go.
Exactly. It was the day before the due date, and like all of a sudden, there's this immense amount of like stomach pain. It's gotta be. It's our first, so it's like this has gotta be labor, real active labor.
Yeah.
So yes, we jump in the car and we rush to the hospital.
Yeah, and I was in crazy pain. I remember you were like registering me, and I was just like, "Oh my God, I'm
You
dying."
were literally crying.
It's the worst pain. And again, retroactively, I know this now. Like people actually say it's worse than birth, and I have to say, it is. It actually is. It was terrible.
You can actually say it having experienced both.
Yes, at the same time, like meaning to say I gave birth very shortly after. So what happened was is that we went in, and that was
You got registered, you got admitted, you got evaluated, and
Were you having contractions that they could have attributed to the pain to?
no. So that was the first thing they checked, and she wasn't having any active contractions. She was dehydrated a little.
a lot, because the
and-
second thing they decided to do was put in an IV,
Yeah.
and they just couldn't.
Yeah, that was
And it was
that
horrible.
very difficult.
There was no veins, right? Because I had just kept throwing up like multiple times on the way there, and so there was just none veins, not even a one in sight. And then finally, well, this is the other crazy story. Like, again, it was like a Saturday night. And I'm sure as someone who works in hospitals, who's running the teams on a Saturday night, who's running the teams in general, like the residents. And they basically were just like, they finally got it in, and not even a comfortable place. They had to stick it like in like the shelf of my arm versus like the hand, which is much more comfortable. And it was basically like the weekend and that type of like vibe. And so the vibe was that this was like a major inconvenience for everyone that was there. They were like, oh, on a weekend? Like, really? Like, you should have waited till Monday.
Because, babies just come on a schedule. So, like, let's shut down the unit for a day, I always say, let's shut down the unit for lunch. Like, just 1 hour. Give me an hour,
Exactly.
That's all we need.
And so the beginning of like the horror story, besides for the immense amounts of pain that I was in, the nurse who finally got the IV in, I don't know what happened, but suddenly like her hand slipped, and the IV was in, but not the cover piece. So suddenly there was just like blood, like open arteries everywhere. And it was really intense. There was just like blood. I don't know if you've ever seen this before.
You had a good vein. So, yes, I've seen it before.
So that was like step one of like working its way up there to the actual like craziness. Because the next thing that happened is they decided to like give me some medicine, and like Mo is like pre-med, so he's like standing on the side, all like, I know where the linen closet is because I I volunteered here before. And basically they gave me like pain meds, and then they came back a little while later.
Ultrasound also.
I guess
For the
that's what they
baby,
came back
everything
for,
was
right?
fine there.
For the ultrasound. But either way, there was this, probably like intern who was there. And while he was there, just being all super like snippy and annoyed.
I think it was it was a team of people. It had to have been at least 3 people, and so this is like 1 a.m. Sunday morning. So I'd have to say it was either like one of the senior residents, or maybe it was whichever attending was in house at that moment. But either way, they come in, they're evaluating, and they're checking things, and they do a quick ultrasound. Everything with the baby's fine, thank God. And the tachometry, she's not reading with any contractions. The heart rate is fine, and that's like it. They're like, well, you're having stomach pains. It has nothing to do with labor or the baby. She got Percocet, and we remember distinctively it was this little blue. It was a blue coated pill, and
as they're standing there and they're talking, they're like
10-15 minutes.
they're just
after
like
you got it, or
discussing.
5 minutes after you got it. Actually,
Let me guess, you vomited blue all over them.
Yeah, but Shira like sits up saying, I don't feel well. I
I'm
feel
like,
like I'm
this
gonna
is-
vomit.
it's
And
not-
they were like completely ignoring her. Like they weren't even hearing what she was saying. Like brushing while they were talking about what they think and what they want to do. And I'm the only one listening, thank God. And so I quickly get, a little kidney bin and bring it over to her just
Good
in
thing you
time.
volunteered at the hospital and knew like
Exactly.
these supplies.
He knew where all the things
It
were.
was right there, and,
came in
and
handy.
she just in the nick
Definitely.
of time, and everything goes in there, and they're like looking at it.
They were shook.
and they were shook. And
They
they're
were
like,
actually
"What is this
shook.
blue thing.
They were like,
inside here
they were literally
that's
like,
shrieking?"
hold on.
What is
Her
this?
vomit is blue.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh my
why?
gosh, this sounds like a
And-
comedy show. This legit
It
sounds
literally
like
It
was.
a
was. So
comedy
this
show.
is me like covered in blood because you remember 5 minutes before the vein had popped open. And then now they're just like staring down at this blue bucket of, they don't know what it is. And Mo's in the background like raising his little arm like, Percocet.
Excuse me. Hello. She just.
So, Mo, you are the smart genius of the bunch, and you know that the blue vomit is because of the Percocet. Did you tell them that?
Yep, I did. I was like, she just had a pill that color. And that's why surrounding it is green, and in the middle is this little blue ball. And at first, I sort of remember them like not wanting to believe it, like or being skeptical. And then the nurse corroborated that and said, yeah, she had just gotten like 5-ish minutes ago Percocet and Zofran and blah blah blah. And they're like, okay.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
that was and then they were done. They're like, okay, well, you're being treated. We know what everything is. You're not in active labor. We'll figure this out. Okay,
And thus began the longest night or the longest 24 hours of my life.
So, how did you feel? You just felt okay leaving the hospital with everything that was going on for you?
No,
Oh,
I did not leave.
we
I could not
she
move.
got admitted in for the gallstone workup.
Oh, okay. So they were trying to rule it out already. They were at the point where they were suspecting it might be that.
Yes. So finding out exactly the history, how these pains have been over the last many weeks and months, and where it was located, and the associations. And like, okay, well, this definitely sounds like that could be that. So ordered a formal, abdominal, liver, gallbladder ultrasound. And I remember you were wheeled down in the stretcher, and I was walking next to you, and went down to radiology, got the ultrasound done, and I think I remember even the tech at that point in time saying, "Oh yeah, it's gallstones." And then by that time, it was already the next day into business hours, quote unquote, of Sunday. Shira's OB came, and she just settled a lot of things. She put everything into perspective, and I guess you were hooked up already. NPO, not allowed to eat, getting IV antibiotics and fluids, and pain medication. That was pretty much what she was there for. She was wiped out. She was just...
It was terrible pain. I
was
honestly do
stretched.
not remember everything that he just said in the last 2 minutes. I don't remember it. Zero recollection. I just remember lying in the bed and dying slowly and quickly altogether. And they couldn't really give me much of anything. And I just remember, even when they did give me something and there was a little bit of relief, within the next few hours, I'll be like, go tell them to make sure that it comes in time, because I can't wait in between. Go. And you were just like, I don't know anyone here. I haven't even been to med school yet. And I was like, tell them that you're going to med school. I was like, tell them that you're going to med school.
I didn't tell any of them I was going to med school.
You were counting down the seconds until you can get the next pain medication. And what was the plan after they found out that you had gallstones?
They were waiting for the surgeon, who was not
Right.
going to be in until Monday morning, right? And they were just like, sorry.
So the plan was surgery, though, at 39 plus weeks.
No,
They wanted the surgeon to come in and clear me for birth,
for induction.
for induction.
Oh, I see. So they wanted you evaluated by the surgeon to determine whether surgery was necessary or not.
Correct. Was there anything that needed to be done urgently or acutely at that moment, or could the OB, as her plan, go ahead with induction of labor?
The surgeon finally came. Did they get there?
Yep. The surgeon himself came. He was really nice, and he said that Shira's very, very fine to go ahead with induction. Till that time, she was sort of in this pseudo room, the one where the wall is just the curtain that slides back and forth, kind of
Triage.
thing. Yeah, exactly. A kind of triage room, but it wasn't in the ERs. I guess it was an L&D type of triage room of some sort.
Right. Yeah. So we have triage in labor and delivery because I like to say that labor and delivery is an emergency department, ICU, medical surgical unit, all in one for pregnant women.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you were kind of like probably not fully admitted. You were outpatient or observation, and you were just waiting. They were waiting to figure out what they were going to do with you.
Right. So then she got into her formal room, a room there, and that was, from what I remember, that was the long haul. You know, because she's gravid. This is her first baby. She's getting induced. So I mean, I didn't know any of that then. None of us did. But we're like, okay, this is going to be okay. Great. They're going to induce the labor. Cool. Now I know why it took so long, but it did.
Yeah, so small medical tidbit. I like to just put the little tidbits in for a first-time mom that's being induced, especially if her cervix is really closed, thick, and high. It's not abnormal for it to take like 3 days for it to happen. So we'll hear your experiences, but it's not an abnormal thing. And sometimes it's medically necessary. Sometimes people opt for it even if it's not quote-unquote medically necessary, but after 39 weeks, they decide that they want to have an induction. But it's good to know that ahead of time, that it is normal having those expectations, which you guys didn't at that point, which maybe was a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you were in for the long haul. How long did it take?
It took about a day. I want to say the induction started mid-Sunday or so, and Rafi was born late Monday morning.
Okay, that's not bad.
It's not too bad. Definitely not too bad. Definitely not 3 days.
Shira, did you have an epidural?
Okay, so the reason why I'm staying so quiet throughout all this is because honestly, I don't remember this part.
No, she was out. She was wiped out already.
So after the so many
from all the
hours,
pain and the pain medications.
yeah.
And everything.
So after the so many hours of being in so much pain, then they finally, when they induced me, they gave me, you're gonna know what this is called, I don't, but they gave me like the one where you fall asleep during your contraction and you wake up during the terrible part of it.
Datal.
Which was, I don't recommend.
People have very different reactions to it. A lot of people feel kind of like drunk. It's not going to fully take away the pain. It can make you feel like you don't care as much about the pain. Some people hate the feeling.
So the thing that it did to me, what happened with my story is because I was already going on, must have been 24 hours of other pain medications and being in so much pain, and I was so wiped that it actually put me to sleep. So I fell asleep, and then whichever amount of minutes later, when the contraction was at its height, I would just wake up screaming, and then I would have no time to rest. As soon as it was over, I would just fall right back to sleep again. Like, not falling back to sleep, I would just be out, like knocked out, wake up screaming, knocked out. Do you remember this part?
Yeah, but that you jumped a whole day ahead. But
Okay,
yes,
fine. See, I don't remember.
that's where you are. But
That's the next thing that I remember. Like after that little triage room, that's the next thing I remember.
So after the little triage room, you went to this like side room. I remember it had a sliding, glass, see-through door with curtain, and you had your own bathroom there.
Is that what you remember?
That's what I remember, because it was the middle of the night at that time and going into the day, and so there was no windows. It was dark. You couldn't tell what time it was. You couldn't tell what was going on anywhere else. It was like sort of in the corner of the unit, and I remember during that point in time in that room, you had the first cervical ripening medication with the induction.
And cervical ripening, just medical tidbit, is to kind of get the cervix soft. It's not the actual active induction process yet of giving Pitocin. The oxytocin receptors in your uterus are not going to be sensitive to receive the actual Pitocin given for the induction. So first we'd like to ripen your cervix.
So I remember that, and so that was a weird experience for me as the bystander husband. But and then also in that room, after there were some cervical changes, obviously things opened up a little bit, where they artificially broke her water. That happened in that room as well. The other two things that happened in that room was I went home at some point, which was crazy. And during the pregnancy, we earlier on, we had found a doula and we had settled with her, and in that room, there was one point in time where I guess there was sort of this perception that the labor was, moving along and getting somewhere. So I think we called her in, and I remember her being a little skeptical, like, oh, that fast or something like that. But she did end up coming in, and I remember she was by your side, and you were like, go home and get certain things.
I said that?
Yeah.
Look at you. You were so sound of mind even then, Shira.
It was just very briefly, and I'm 90% sure that I'd gone home for a very, very brief moment in time, and quickly grabbed some more stuff, and came back, and you weren't really doing anything. You were just wiped out. You were just sleeping. You were sleeping the entire time, not able to eat during any of this time or anything. Yes, you're okay. I know.
She can interject with her little things. We hear you guys, so you can talk even with her, doing her thing.
Yeah.
So now you had the doula. Mo came and went, and back with Shira.
So we get through the entire Sunday night. Doula came, and she's like, okay, nothing's happening. So she went back home, and came Monday morning, in middle of the morning, still in that room. Shira's out, just sleeping. And she's getting poked and prodded when people come in, and then they leave. And then we finally, Monday morning, move into the nice, big, spacious, proper L&D room.
So you're moving on up in the world, in the labor world.
So you are already ruptured, you're on all your IV stuff, but now I think you were probably like 6 or 7 or so centimeters
Active labor.
in active labor. So they moved her up to the big room. She was probably about 5 or 6 centimeters, and also gets the anesthesiologist to come put in the epidural.
Shira, did that help your gallstone pain too, the epidural?
What do you remember?
I don't
about that
remember
time?
that. Like, honestly, the pain, I think the attack, I don't know how long these attacks last, but I want to say that the pain was already getting less. Like, after that first haul, I think that's when it started going away.
Yeah. So it's like waves. So you had a really intense wave, and then it started kind of dissipating.
Yeah. So, like, I don't remember being in that terrible pain during the labor part. And that's why I say that first part was so much worse. Because once I got the epidural, it was kind of smooth sailing.
Right. And you also segued into the epidural with IV pain medications. So,
Yeah.
like, she sort of had that bridge.
You had all the pain meds on board.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one really horrible thing is that, again, I don't know what it was. It was either the team that was in the hospital then, or I don't know, the time of day, or like what the deal was, but for some reason it wasn't like well coordinated, and so I did not get a catheter together with my epidural. They were like, it's coming. And so here I was just peeing everywhere. But it's
And not
okay
even knowing that
because
you
I
were.
was already, right? Like backtrack, covered in blood, and then vomit. And so this was just
It
another.
was the only other bodily fluid that was missing.
Yeah.
So my question though is was it pee or was it amniotic fluid? Because once your water is broken, you're just gonna keep on leaking that amniotic fluid.
Probably a little bit of both.
Plot twist here. 10 years later, you discover that maybe it was really amniotic fluid after all.
Right.
Let us just sum it up
Yeah.
that it was mighty gross.
Yeah.
It was not like spa-like at all. I was just lying there. And back to Mo's expertise, like his level of expertise right then was finding closets of things, okay?
Yeah.
This is where he was.
So I found
that was the way that he
all the
could help me.
towels and all the chucks
So
and
he
all
was like,
the.
I know, I've seen, there's a cart in the hallway.
Listen, you were a lot more useful than many husbands, Mo. So, kudos, Shira.
Yeah, I guess so. I
And
guess
so exactly, like he changed all the sheets and he had it going on. It was really, it worked.
You guys were star patients. I mean, patients who like change their own sheets. I ask dads a lot of times to help me out when I need to change the linen on a mom who can't move with an epidural. But like, this is like game changer. I mean, independent, super independent there, Like you practically didn't need a nurse.
Yeah. Then I guess goes the part where I was waking up and falling asleep.
Yes.
I guess that's
Right.
what
So
was
then came the part where the active labor was progressing, and we sort of hit this like plateau where Shira was like staying at 7 cms. Like she wouldn't get past it. The contractions were significant.
And by the way, there was no doula there at the point
When
because
did
she
she
had
come
been
back?
stressing me out because she was like, "You paid for 5 hours. This is what you get. Call me when you're ready to give birth." And I just kind of, I think in the back of my mind, I was like, "Okay," and then I just forgot about her because it was too strict. You think I could keep track of the amount
But
of time or like when it would happen or
Right.
it
But
was
she
just,
did come back in
which
time
was
for
a whole other weird
think.
story.
She was there. Your mom
she
was there.
She entered the room like as the child was.
Oh, really?
Yes, I remember that. I remember it really clearly because I remember that her name was Leia, and my mom has a really good friend Leia. And after all these hours, it was finally time to give birth. And they were like, okay, and push. And I'll tell you the rest of the story in a minute, but it was finally time to push. And my mom's like, oh, Leia's here. And I was like, what? Why?
Why is your friend here?
Like I didn't even the doula had gone so far back in the list of like things that like my mom's friend seemed more like an appropriate person to show up at that moment. So that was also funny in itself because I had only realized which Leia it was like after I had given birth. I like looked up and I was like, oh, I thought Leia was here. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, that was different. Because she was definitely there. It was because your mom was on your left side, she was on the right side. The rest of the team was around, and I was in the corner. And we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
But we sort of hit this plateau where she wasn't dilating anymore past 7 cms, and the contractions were significant enough that Rafi started to have significant decelerations, and that's where his the fetal heart rate goes down significantly after a contraction completely occurs and not appropriately with a contraction or early, and so it's a sign of fetal distress. And so the team started to assess Shira a little bit more frequently, and I don't know what other nuances they may have done, shifting her, giving her a bolus, or adjusting the Pitocin, but
He's saying this now. I
I'm
don't
saying
think
this
he
in hindsight
realized.
now. I would have expected some of those things to maybe have occurred, but all I know is that they were coming in and they were checking her fairly frequently, and at one point the attending OB was there, and it wasn't Shira's proper OB that had been following her. It was one of the 3 of the practice. So we had met her before, but
Not the primary one that you had seen throughout the pregnancy.
correct. So, but she was concerned enough that, and I remember this stuck in my mind, where she told the charge nurse to have the OR ready and prepped.
Oh boy.
Because if these were to persist, then we'd have to go for C-section.
Yeah.
And
that was like a super intense couple of minutes because
Yeah.
they were just like C-section, and my heart started beating really fast, and I was just like, I don't want this, and that fear, and just this is not what we planned for, and I literally started freaking out. Like I don't want this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I think
yeah. It was,
think
it
that
was,
that's
that
what I kept
was when
saying.
we,
Like, I
we
don't wanna
really
do this.
started
I
to
don't
feel
wanna
the
do this.
tension in the room. And yes, definitely from Shira's standpoint of undergoing a procedure that was very, very serious.
we have 2 versions of the story, okay? Because my version is extremely like spiritual, what happened next, and I literally get tears in my eyes every single time I remember this. And Mo's version is extremely medical, to the point, and makes a lot of sense. So I guess you could hear both our versions and then decide which one you believe. But basically, the next thing that happened, right? So I'm like freaking out, saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I remember that in my 2-3 weeks before my due date, I had listened to this whole entire like speech, like a share. I don't even remember the whole thing, to be really honest. But the one thing that I walked away from it was talking about how, God gives us these like trials, and he wants us to be close to him. Like it's the one time in your life, like even if you don't go through, different traumatic events in your childhood or growing up or whatever, this is the one time where you're like dependent on him. Like you can't control the situation. You just cannot. So you can actually like, I very much internalize that. And one of the things that it said in this speech was, so if you encounter something that just seems like you can't do, you don't want to do, you're done, you're freaking out, just say, like, I give it to God. Like, I agree. It's going to happen. It's okay. Here we go. It's supposed to be that way.
It's the surrender, the act of surrender to God.
Exactly.
And so that's how you were feeling at that point. You were like accessing that inspiration that you heard, and you were just saying, God, I surrender to whatever you plan for me at this moment.
Yeah. I took a deep breath and I was like, I'm going to stop saying that I can't do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Here we go. And so the doctor then came forward and she was like, okay, I'm going to do one last check. And then, you know, if we have to go in, we have to go in. They turned on all the lights and it seemed like they were literally waiting to like roll me away. And she quickly checked me and she was like, oh my God, 10 centimeters dilated. The baby's about to be born. Here we go. And I pushed twice and he was born.
Wow.
And that's kind of the crazy story.
How many pushes?
Twice, right?
Yeah.
Like
Two,
it was like
two or three at most.
yeah. It was literally, yeah.
It was
that
like
was
15. Yeah, it was like 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes of the actual like pushing.
Wow.
Yeah.
For a first time. Wow. Wow. You know, sometimes babies have significant decels when the baby descends very quickly. And I wonder if that was also part of what was going on.
I believe he had a nuchal cord ×1, so
Cord around the neck. Yep.
together with that descent, that may have contributed to that as well.
And 1/3 of babies are born, as probably Mo, 1/3 of babies are born with some cord wrapped around some kind of body part. But a lot of times it doesn't affect things as much. If it's super tight and it is putting the baby in distress, that's a different story. But not every cord around the neck does. Here it sounds like it was kind of iffy, but he made it out. 2 pushes and he made it out breathing and all that.
Yeah. We remember they had the PEDS team, the NICU team, called everyone in. There was literally at least 10 plus people in the room.
It was very intense.
It was very
like
intense.
Very
Yeah.
high energy of people who were very concerned.
Yeah, I remember that exact version. They came in and she checked one more time and she's like, "Oh, it's 9. Oop, whoops, it's 10." and then the pushing began and it really. I remember I was in the corner because there was no room at the bed anymore, and I was in the corner. I was literally just praying. I was just praying, and then.
And then why don't you say the disappointing medical version of the story that you think what happened?
What I said? What do you mean?
Do you not remember this?
Said that they came in. They said 9, and then opened it to 10, and that was it.
Okay, now you're not being dramatic about it, but basically, when I was, we were like saying our birth story this other time before you gave this news to me, and you were like, no, it wasn't like, it didn't just happen. He was like, they went in there, yanked you open, and the baby came out.
I give you credit, Shira. I think it was all you. I'm going with that one.
I'm going with my version of the story.
Her version is a good version.
You know what? It doesn't matter what version it is. What matters is that he came out safely. He came out, how you had hoped he would come out, healthy and crying. You were able to avoid the C-section. If you would have needed it, it's a wonderful gift to have, but you were able to avoid it. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters. It was beautiful. And I love the spirituality involved. I'm myself can not be very spiritual when I'm in labor. I'm very primal. So that's really beautiful. I love hearing when women do access that spirituality. So Mo, you were saying that you were in the corner over there. Was there any other additional detail about the being in the corner?
Oh, I was literally crying and davening, like literally. That's
We're a very spiritual duo.
we are we are very connected to our higher powers.
Yeah, you are. And Shira, I don't know if you remember him davening, but I feel so supported when my husband davened, and daven means pray for those who aren't affiliated. I felt so supported because there's really very little that a husband can do at that point. And there's really so little that we have control over. So you feel like this is some form of control of influence, spiritual influence that you have over the birth.
Yeah.
I agree.
And it definitely was amplified by the tension in the room. And
they just wanted to get him out. I think they even used a vacuum, so he was kind of like a cone head for
he
a while.
definitely had significant molding.
That wasn't fun.
aka cone head. So he had a little bit of swelling at the top of his head from the vacuum. But he was very cute. He was very cute when he came out, and that was so amazing because he came out and he did so well. He cried. He looked great. I wanted to give him APGARs of 11 and 11, but that wasn't allowed back then. But but as quick as all those people came in, once he was out and he was on the warmer, he got assessed by the team. Within a few minutes, they were out and gone because, thank God, he looked so good, and definitely so grateful about that.
And Shira, did you feel like it was just all worth it as soon as you saw him? Did you feel that instant connection, or were you one of those people that just had so much going on and so much involvement that it was like kind of hard to be in the moment?
Yeah, so I'll honestly say this is like a tough one for me, this question, because in all, like my first two, like I have a 10 and a 9-year-old, and then I have this new baby, and just in general, the whole outlook of the whole pregnancy, the whole wanting a child, the whole, the first two I kind of did out of obligation. It was kind of like I didn't have so many supporting people being like, you don't have to right now, like it's cool. It was kind of just the done thing. So yeah.
I go over that in my second and third birth stories episode. We talk about that too, my husband and I.
And I think that also attributed to like postpartum depression, like I definitely had. And then I kind of continued into my next pregnancy. Like by the time Rafi was 8 months old, I was already pregnant again. And those were just, long years. So, I guess I would say not connected, in short.
Yeah. And so I'd like to segue into that, where you had quite a significant amount of years of a break between your second and your third. And I'm sure, given you're just in a different decade of life with so much more wisdom and maturity, and I'm sure that the whole experience of having a child and consciously making that choice and decision was very different. And also, I think it's exciting when you have older kids that are old enough to understand, and I think further enough from the baby to not really feel a lot of jealousy. I'm sure that was a different experience as well. And you were going through a harder time when I think that in each stage of the medical training, you have just a little bit more control over your life. So like when you're pre-med and in medical school, you have like zero control of your life. Like residency, maybe a tiny drop more. And I don't know about fellowship. I'm hoping a tiny drop more. I don't know. But, how was that process, just briefly, because we're running out of time, but just briefly with your last baby, can you highlight some major differences in the experience?
Yeah. Do you want to go first? Do you have anything to say?
Like, how was it for you, Mo? You're a neonatologist. You know and see all the things that you see that are unpleasant, to say the least. And sometimes it's scary having so much knowledge. Myself, when I was pregnant with my last one, I was a labor and delivery nurse. I kind of blocked that out. I actually had to do my neonatal resuscitation recertification at 39 weeks. And what I held on to was that, 90% of babies come out breathing on their own. So, but was it any different for you having all of that medical knowledge so many years later?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely want to agree with that aspect of like planning and choosing to go through with becoming pregnant and having a baby. So that was in itself like set a tone for the entire pregnancy. But for me, the highlighted difference, especially due to my experiences as a neonatal doctor, is every stage, right? So the first trimester into the second trimester, successfully passing into it and being, okay, great. But then literally from 23 weeks on, 22 weeks even, I've taken care of these babies, and knowing what they need, sometimes it doesn't go so well. And it was literally every week of gestation that passed was another sigh of relief. And Shira...
I was all like happy. Like I would be watching the little videos, like it's so cute. Like look, our baby's fatter this week, and he would be like, whew, past week 27.
Right.
And I think that the weeks between 22 and 28 weeks, I think are probably like the most nerve-wracking weeks, because that's the period of time where a baby is viable, they can survive, but the complications are the greatest
Yep.
at that point. And it's just like after 28 weeks, they just have a much better chance of survival, and making it good without other
Yeah.
deficits. Would you agree with that? Like somewhere like between that 22 to 28 week mark.
Yeah, so that was definitely it. As soon as we got into that, past that 22, 23 week mark, I was like, okay, let's get to 26 weeks. Let's get to 28 weeks. And then we got to 28 weeks. I'm like, let's just get to 32 weeks, okay? Let's do 32 weeks. And then Shira would be like, well, what's your experience with the 28 weekers, the 30 weekers, the 31 weekers? Like, oh, this kid, we have this one that does so well and didn't even need any intubation, breathing tube, did fine with that. And I'm like, no, let's get to 32. Let's get to 34.
'Cause this was also
Okay, we're at
happening
34. Let's get to 36. Once we're at 36, then I started to calm down just a little bit.
Yeah, because I'm saying that this was also happening in real time for him. Like, he was going to work and actually dealing with these kids who were the same ages. I remember at one point
As
you
our
were
fetus.
like, that's our baby's age. Don't give birth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know the details if you had a healthy pregnancy or not, but, from what I've known, it seemed like your pregnancy was pretty straightforward and uncomplicated, but yet, and you had no history
Correct.
of premature labor or anything, but yet as a neonatologist who knows so much, you're just worried because you see a lot of things more than the average person. So you can't live in that la la land like most of us, do.
Yeah, like I know the statistics, I know what's common, but nonetheless, there's always those that don't follow the book. There's the
Yeah.
mom that could be, very, very parity, and she's already had, 5, 6, 7 kids, and that increases risk for prematurity itself. So one of them is premature, and to what degree, we don't know. It can be various, but it's you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, birth is in the hands of God. That's it.
sure.
So the more we learn, the more we know how little we know. And I'm so grateful to science and all of the advances that we have today to be able to keep even smaller and smaller babies alive. But just so much that we don't know. So much to be grateful for when things go
Correct.
well and right, like it did for you, right?
Yeah, thank goodness.
And then did you give birth in the same hospital that Mo works?
No, one closer to home.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think it was worth it, again, because things were going so well, and I had a really great provider that I liked, and it was just, again, so close to home. I went for that because like his work is like 45 minutes away, and I didn't want to deal with like the traveling and also traveling into appointments.
Yeah.
there was no need. Like she had a good OB, and we went to the hospital that he was is affiliated at, and it happens to be the closest one to us, and so that all worked out really well. Shira actually even got induced in order to comply with Mo's schedule.
Exactly. That being said, even though I was so chill and wanted a hospital here, I was still so nervous because he was on service. So I did get induced, and it was worth it.
Another
It
mode
was-
of gaining control over this uncertain
Yeah.
experience, process.
So it did take a long time, and my doctor warned me, and I was like, it's fine. Like, I'll do it. Although I didn't believe him. I was like, it's fine. Like, you'll see.
Well,
It's gonna be shorter
we
than
didn't
you think.
believe him because Daniela, our second, was induced as well, and actually went. That was a really great birthing experience for sure because
Yeah.
she recalls this experience and she's always smiling ear to ear, so it was a
It
good
was.
experience.
I'll tell it to you in a nutshell. Woke up in the morning, went into the hospital, got induced. 6 hours later, she was born after also like 10 minutes of pushing.
Awesome.
So that was a really fun story.
Sounds like she made up for everything you went through with Ralphie.
She did.
Oh my god, totally!
Yeah,
That's a
exactly.
great way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After first babies, moms typically have faster labors, but when there's been a break of over 5 years, sometimes they can act as if it's their first baby again.
So that's probably what happened.
We never know how it will go. It can go, fast, right in order of not having their first, but sometimes moms can act as if it's their first. So it's possible that was it. But, you've gone through, you had inductions before, you had successful vaginal deliveries, and you had personal life circumstances. And, I'm so happy that everything went so well and nice for you.
Yeah. So that was also like kind of interesting. So besides for the amount of time, It was kind of cool going in with Mo, who like, this is his deal. Like, he just knew what was going on. I mean, I felt like I had like, it took 12 hours, the whole thing. It was a long time. But I really did have that care the whole entire time. Like, I decided, obviously, not to go for a doula again after that first time, that ridiculous first time, where she didn't really do much, and then I thought she was my mom's friend. So, again, didn't really do much. And so, yeah, Mo was just there the whole time, and he kind of, you know, he's able to read all the charts and things, and I don't know, just like the monitors and know what's going on, and it was kind of smooth sailing.
It felt a little bit like you were an insider.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I want to ask you, Shira, did that help after you had the baby with taking care of the baby? Like, did it help that Mo has all that experience with babies?
Oh, it still helps till today. Like, I always laugh, and I'm like, we're never sick. Because, like, you know, like us, my children, like, I mean, Mo just takes one look, and he's like, you're not dying. You're good. He's like, I know what dying looks like.
Same. My kids' hands have to, like, their arm has to be half off of their body in order for them to, exactly, we got the whole medical kit and everything. But I mean, even just with, like, the baby care, the transition with having a newborn, like, just swaddling the baby and holding the baby and changing the baby's diapers. Some dads, like, are just scared or unwilling to do it.
Oh, yeah. So Mo is actually pretty bragful of his swaddling capabilities. Yeah. I think he goes up against the nurses sometimes. So
mad skills.
I've won some awards for my swaddling capabilities. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
As well as my unswaddling capabilities, you know, when I need to examine the babies and stuff. They go hand in hand.
Right, just right when the baby fell asleep,
Yep.
then you open the baby
Yep,
up to
that's
examine them. Yeah, we know about that.
Exactly, right after they fell asleep, right after they ate, right after all of that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's so hectic and busy with everything, Shira. So, you know, I'm going to let you go because I know how crazy things have been. Thank you so much for taking up the time. I just wanted to also give you a shout out on your incredible things that you do, all the art that you put out there. I came to know you for your famous challahs that you make. I haven't seen them in a while. I know it's hectic with the baby and now you're pursuing another project, but your gorgeous, colorful challahs that were themed for different weeks in the Parsha. And they're just stunning with the gold and everything, incredible. And now you are doing your amazing, gorgeous, beautiful art that I cannot wait to have one of your pieces. I want an original. Like, I'm holding out for an original on my wall. It is absolutely gorgeous.
I hear you. We already discussed this. I know what you want.
Yes, I want the Shifra and Pua, the midwives, you know that. So we'll make it happen. But, you know, now I know it's so hectic and crazy, but I just love watching all of your things. And what is your new art account name on Instagram?
Okay, so it's at the Shir Shen Collection.
The Shir Shen Collection, and I'm going to put that up on the show notes. And your original account is It's a Confetti Party, where you can see all of Shira's other shenanigans.
Exactly. Exactly.
And do you have a website too?
Not currently.
Not at the
Still
moment.
working on it. It's so new. Like, I literally just released this art thing a month ago. So pretty new.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. It is just so beautiful. I love your spirituality. I really, it inspires me. You have just a really beautiful way of living Jewish, you know, for lack of a better way to put it. And I just really love it so much. So thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having us
Thanks
and
for
listening.
having us.
Thanks for tuning into the Happy Birthway podcast. Head over to Yoledet Academy on Instagram to continue the conversation. You'll find the link in the episode show notes, as well as links to any additional resources, products, and services mentioned here. If you love listening to this show, you can help it grow by sharing it with your friends and rating and reviewing it. To stay in the loop when new episodes are released, make sure to subscribe. Remember that your health needs are unique and require individualized medical advice. The podcast is not a replacement, and some of the information may not be appropriate for your specific circumstances. My mission is to educate you so that you can confidently collaborate with your healthcare team. I believe that a healthy mom and healthy baby are simply not enough. We also need a happy mom with an empowering birth experience.